Hey, this is Nico from Licks of the Beast, and in this video, we're gonna take a look back at an album that is celebrating its 20th anniversary, the wonderful Dance of Death. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that it's already been 20 years, because I remember this album release like something that happened fairly recently. And it's actually one of only 2 Iron Maiden album releases that I experienced outside of Canada, as I was living in Italy at the time. And I have such great memories of this one. Things like getting super pumped about the first single, Wildest Dreams, and wondering what the follow-up to Brave New World would sound like. Or reading the online forums before the album's release to get a feel for the excitement of fans around the world, and then everyone's utter shock and disbelief after the album cover was revealed. And seriously, that took some getting used to. And I still think it was an unfortunate representation of a brilliant idea. Or even like driving from Naples to Florence with a group of friends to go see the band play on a Tuesday night in November, and then driving back home immediately after the show because some of us absolutely had to be at work or school the next day. And we were all just freaking out the whole ride back because we couldn't believe just how good the show and the band's performance was. Now, because Brave New World was such a successful album and world tour, Maiden went into the studio with loads of momentum, but also huge amounts of pressure as they knew what the expectations were for the follow-up album. And as it turns out, these guys seemed to be at their best when under pressure because with only 6 weeks of writing, they went into the studio with 7 songs ready to be recorded. And they worked on 4 others in the studio for a total of 11 new songs. And while I may not love every single one, I think it's a very strong record with some exceptional writing and arranging overall, and probably 4 or 5 top-level Iron Maiden songs that would have been standout tracks on any of their albums. Listening back 20 years later, the thing that stands out to me the most is just how comfortable the band sounds on this album. Whereas Brave New World sounded and felt like a reunion album, Dance of Death feels like this had been the band all along. Everyone in the band is contributing, and there's a fluidity in the songs and throughout the album that is indicative of just how important the Brave New World tour was for Iron Maiden. Picking up from Brave New World, the songs on Dance of Death are generally more complex, with more layering and textures than any Iron Maiden album up until that point. Even lyrically, the album is an emotional roller coaster, covering everything from living life to the fullest, personal empowerment, historical events, current affairs, moral dilemmas, and even a reflective ballad about being a musician. The music on the album is as rich and diverse as its lyrical themes, so I want to talk about the individual songs and give a little insight into what I think stands out on each of the 11 tracks on Dance of Death. The first single and opening track of the album is a straightforward rocker, but it actually has a fair bit of musical complexity. There are a total of 8 key changes with 5 different keys. That's a lot for a song that's under 4 minutes. So the main riff and verse is in E major. The pre-chorus is in G Mixolydian. The chorus is essentially a paraphrasing of the main riff transposed up a fourth to A major with some borrowed notes from the parallel A minor. Adrian Smith's guitar solo is in B minor, and the bridge before the outro chorus is in E minor, and borrows a major third from E major. Speaking of Adrian's solo, I absolutely love this one. The pacing is excellent, and so is the structure. He's a master at playing with timing, with the way he sometimes gets a little ahead of the beat or slightly behind it. Now my favorite part is this Hendrixy thing he does just before the end. So what he does here is, he bends the first string at the 17th fret, rolls his finger just a little so that he grabs the second string and picks it while the first bend is still ringing. So he gets a pre-bend and release kind of double stop at the 17th fret. The delayed release of the first bend is what really makes this lick for me. Dave Murray songs are so much fun because they're always a little different, but they have this great energy and they're so wonderfully melodic. Rainmaker reminds me a bit of Judas Be My Guide, which is another great Dave Murray song, and I think it was an excellent choice as the follow-up single. So let's talk briefly about the song's excellent and very distinct sounding main riff. Now what I like about it is that it's both melodic and percussive, with a syncopated rhythm and a catchy, ear-grabbing octave jump. Musically, this is very simple. It's just first inversion, D minor, C, and B flat triads. But what's cool is the chords behind the riff don't outline all three triads. Instead, the D minor triad is always highlighted by the D power chord, but the other two are both played first over a B flat chord and then over a C chord. So this makes it sound less obvious and more harmonically interesting than if the accompaniment would have been played D minor, C, B flat in the same order as the triad melody. So instead of this, which would be too obvious and would make the riff sound much less impactful, they play this. So as to provide a much smoother canvas to contain that melody. No More Lies is a fairly straightforward song. It doesn't have any key or time signature changes, and it uses pretty basic chord progressions in the key of A minor. What makes this song stand out is its melodic motifs and the band's brilliant use of dynamics and layering, especially in the softer intro and outro sections. For example, when the third guitar melody is introduced, the two accompaniment guitars play different but complementary rhythm figures. The first, played by Dave Murray, doubles the bass an octave higher, with arpeggiated root fifth chords. While Adrian Smith arpeggiates a single A minor add 9 chord. Together, this creates a wonderful sonic texture, and this is the kind of layering and texturing I was alluding to earlier. Monsiger features a thrashing main riff in 12/8 time, and it was written by Yannick Gers. I love how the tail at the very end of the riff isn't played as tightly as the rest, so that it sounds a bit different from how a more traditional metal player would approach it. So it's not, but more like. The craziest part of the song, for me, is the modulation from E minor to the parallel key of E major in the bridge or post-chorus section. That part really caught me off guard the first time I heard it, and it brought me back to Power Slave for some reason. Now, I don't know if it reminds me a bit of Lost for Words or Flash of the Blade, or maybe a mix of both, but either way, it's unexpected and a bit weird in a cool way. The title track of the album also reminds me a bit of Power Slave in that it gives me a vibe similar to Rime of the Ancient Mariner, with the way the narrator lulls you and enthralls you with his crazy supernatural story that stays with you long after the song is over. The first part is played in 3/4 time and is a little reminiscent of a folk dance. So they start off with a rather typical Iron Maiden style arpeggiated figure like this. And then they switch to pizzicato sextuplets as they gradually build tension. For those of you who may not know this term, pizzicato means pinched in Italian, and basically refers to plucking the strings instead of picking or using a bow in the case of some other stringed instruments. Now, to be precise, Yannick is actually playing pizzicato on acoustic guitar, Dave is playing the same pattern but with a pick, and Adrian is adding some embellishments for texture. Once we hit a key moment in the narration of the protagonist's story, the time changes to 4/4. And the effect of this change is extremely powerful, and you get the feeling that from this point on, things are about to get seriously intense. This way of depicting scenery and conveying powerful emotions with simple but effective changes or variations in the music is something Iron Maiden have become exceptionally good at over the years. Gates of Tomorrow is possibly the only Iron Maiden song in the key of G minor. Now, this one was co-written by Yannick Gers, Bruce Dickinson, and Steve Harris. The main riff is somewhat of a repurposed Lord of the Flies riff, although this one is more complex as the melody moves along with the chord changes. And I think it's really cool how they made an idea from 3 albums prior, basically that pizzicato style riff, sound new and fresh. So it goes something like this. Now here's a little interesting tidbit you might want to pay attention to in this song, and that is how the verse melody starts in G Mixolydian and then concludes in G Aeolian. And the way they make this shift between the two modes so seamless is by using just the G and F power chords for the first half, as those two chords are common to both modes. So this allows for the Mixolydian melody to sound interesting yet natural. But then, when they go to the E flat power chord for the second half of the verse, the note E, which is the Mixolydian major sixth, doesn't really work. So it has to be replaced with E flat, which is the minor sixth. And it follows naturally that the third will be a minor third as well. Otherwise, it would sound really off with a major third. So with the minor sixth and the minor third, that part is clearly Aeolian. So I'll play them back to back so you can hear how the two modes work together. This is yet another example of the musical complexity that this album exhibits. New Frontier is the first and to date the only song ever co-written by drummer Nicko McBrain. In the Death on the Road documentary, Steve Harris talks about how Nicko wrote the song on bass and Steve thought it sounded just like his own playing, which sounds crazy, right? But then again, those two had been playing together as a rhythm section for 20 years at the time the song was written. And it's been twice that long now. So, of course they're going to know each other's playing styles inside out. I mean, who else is Nicko going to sound like on bass? Overall, it's a fairly straightforward song, but it does have a few particularities in the arrangement. Now, one of the coolest parts for me is the three-part polyphonic interlude that follows Adrian Smith's solo. It's got this old school, and again, I'm reminded of the Powerslave album, choppy phrasing with two guitars harmonizing arpeggio figures and a third guitar playing a smoother sounding version of the melody over that. So one guitar is doing something like this. The other one is playing the same idea up here. And the third guitar, which sounds like Dave Murray, is playing this smooth melody. Passchendale was a huge surprise to me when the album first came out, because while I've always considered Adrian Smith to be an exceptional songwriter, he's mostly known for writing strong singles. In fact, with the exception of the reincarnation of Benjamin Brieg from A Matter of Life and Death, he either wrote or co-wrote the lead single of every Iron Maiden album since 1983's Peace of Mind, not counting, of course, the 4 albums released in the 90s. Flight of Icarus, 2 Minutes to Midnight, Wasted Years, Can I Play With Madness, The Wicker Man, Wildest Dreams, El Dorado, Speed of Light, and The Writing on the Wall. But I guess he wanted a different kind of challenge and ended up writing an 8.5-minute long epic about the horrors of a brutal campaign from the First World War that resulted in approximately 500,000 casualties. Even though this is an epic, there aren't any odd key signatures or any time or tempo changes. It does change keys a few times in the solo section, but that's not something out of the ordinary for Maiden. So in that sense, the song is pretty straightforward. There are, however, changes in feel and mood, varying levels of intensity, and an absolutely masterful arrangement that makes this piece a study in musical storytelling. There are so many great parts in this song, from the haunting tapped intro-outro melody to the riff that launches the guitar solo section. But if I had to pick one part to highlight, it would be the bridge that starts with this riff and then goes into the "Every man must play his part" verse. Now that short stop at the end of the second repeat never fails to grab my attention. That is an excellent example of why the song's arrangement is so good. The next song is Face in the Sand, and it's truly impressive the way the band plays with time on this one. So it starts off with a 6/8 time sway, a little bit like Blood Brothers, and the listener is lulled into a comfortable feeling, and then out of nowhere, the song shifts to 12/8 time, with an ominous sounding 16th note sextuplet figure played on bass, and the guitars are playing suspended chords and open harmonics to build the tension even further. Now the 12/8 pulse of the bass and drums, marked by Nicko McBrain's first and only time ever playing with a double bass pedal non-stop until the instrumental section, keeps the tension elevated. And speaking of the instrumental section, the riff that plays just before the solo is so cool, and once again, very reminiscent of 80s Iron Maiden. And that's doubled an octave lower down here. Now this piece has the very unique characteristic of a tempo that is continuously accelerating from the beginning to the end of the song. Age of Innocence is yet another Dave Murray composition, and it's a rare thing to get two songs by Dave on an album. Now this one features some pretty clever use of power chords. So by simply moving one finger on a root fifth power chord, we can get some altered voicings, like root third major or minor dyads, root flat fifth dyads, augmented, suspended, etc. The entire verse riff is built this way, and the resulting tension fits very well with the song's lyrics, which are about feeling outraged at the rise in violent crime and what Steve Harris perceived as an excessively soft legal system in England at the time. The song also contains a bit of a hidden gem in the form of a wonderful three-part guitar harmony following Dave's solo, but that's a topic for a future video. Dance of Death closes with Journeyman, which is the first and only true ballad in Iron Maiden history. The song is mostly in the key of A minor, but during the verses, when they play the A chord against the F major 7 chord, they play it with a C sharp instead of a C, which makes it A major. And this gives it a very uplifting, surreal feeling. The chorus features a wonderful modulation to the key of D minor, and the progression feels so smooth and natural, and that is mostly because the first three chords, D minor, F major, and C major, are common to both the key of A minor and D major. So it's only when they go to that B flat chord and the vocal melody hits that half step from the minor 6th to the 5th that you realize they've completely changed key. And this is very clever, and it's evident that by this point, the band had become exceptionally refined songcrafters. I just want to end with a few quick notes about the band's performance on this record. So I thought the band sounded particularly inspired here. Nico was clearly trying new things, from writing songs to playing with a double pedal, and there are some of my absolute favorite performances of his on here. Dance of Death, Passchendale, and New Frontier in particular are songs where Nico really shines. Steve Harris sounds energized and intense throughout the whole record, and even though his bass is a little less upfront than it typically is, I really like his tone, as it seems to be a little rounder and thicker. It gives the songs a nice drive with heaviness and power all throughout. Bruce Dickinson was in exceptional form, and I like that he struck a nice balance between his powerful tenor style and his edgier, more aggressive delivery that he started using in the 90s. There are some pretty intense Dickinsonisms on the record, but for me, Rainmaker, No More Lies, Passchendale, Dance of Death, and Journeyman are my favorite performances of his on the album. And I have to say that when I saw them in Florence for that tour, he sounded absolutely unbelievable. The three guitarists were working together with an incredible synergy and complementing one another all over the album. As I mentioned a few times in this video, there is a lot of layering of the guitar parts, and some songs have 3 different solos or 3-part harmony sections. Dave, Yannick, and Adrian all take some truly wonderful solos on the album. My favorite one from Dave is Rainmaker, from Yannick it's Gates of Tomorrow, and from Adrian it's a tie between Wildest Dreams and No More Lies. But my favorite solo sections of the entire record are the title track and Passchendale. both songs have 3 impeccable and highly memorable solos that highlight everything we love about each of the 3 guitarists' individual playing styles. And that's it for now. I really hope you enjoyed this 20-year retrospective of Dance of Death, and I think it would be interesting to compare the initial reaction to this album of both older and newer fans, as well as those who discovered Iron Maiden more recently and didn't listen to it until years after its original release. Please leave your comments and questions in the comment section. As always, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and do stay tuned for more licks of the beast. Okay. Yes, okay, no, Miles. Miles. Okay, buddy. Okay, all right, Miles. Oh, Jesus. Buddy. Buddy, you're killing me. Okay, all right, I understand. Yes, we're gonna eat soon. Okay, all right. Miles. Okay.